Welcome. This is History with Jimmy. I'm Jimmy Bach, and my producer Chandler Holmes. And this is episode 21. And this is a special episode because this episode is going to be called History with Chandler. Because Chandler has all of his supplies and things here that he has, his artifacts, and he's going to be talking about them. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to my producer and my assistant and a loyal historian, Mr. Chandler Holmes.
Hi everyone. So today what we're going to be looking at is like a pretty basic setup for a soldier from World War II, generally in the infantry and the European theater of combat. We're just going to be looking over some of the general stuff that they would have been carrying with them. Okay, so overall you're going to see a few things, and a general consensus is that everything from World War II in the early stages is really just stuff from World War I that was carried over. Okay, so if Jimmy can pick up the camera for me, we're going to take a closer look at this stuff. Alright, so our first thing we're going to be looking at is called the cartridge belt. So that's really what everything stems off of. So Jimmy can come closer and get a look at the cartridge belt itself. This is what your ammunition would be carried in, and in each one of these pockets you're going to have one of these clips for your M1 Garand rifle, and these hold about 8 rounds each. You have 10 slots for them, so you can carry about 80 rounds total. But generally that's not really enough. Once the bullets start flying, you'll find that you'll run out pretty quickly. So soldiers would carry a bandolier with them. This was a way so they can carry some extra ammunition with them. This would hold about 48 more rounds in it for them. So that's your cartridge belt and your bandolier. That's how you'd be having all your ammunition with you. And then off of that, we can see we branch down. Our first thing we're going to look at is our canteen. So your canteen breaks down into 2 other pieces once you get it out of the cover. You have your canteen. This is for your water. Then you have a cup that's built in with that. This would be for coffee or when you had time for it. Other drinks that weren't water, you put in here. You can boil stuff with it. It was pretty neat that they'd have this cup, and all it does is just slides into the canteen and they go into the cover. Now if we move over to the left, we got a first aid kit. These first aid kits, we see first of all, like in the beginning parts of the war, we would see them have these 1910 first aid kits. These are carried over from World War I. And then as you see they move on, they go away from the 2 snaps and they just have the 1 later on in the war. And that was a lot better of a design. It's a lot easier to open and close quickly. This one you kind of have to mess around with just to get the bandage out of. You would see 2 types of bandages too. We have this one. This one's in a tin. There's some salt in there too. This one is just a straight bandage. It comes in 3 pieces. This cardboard is just here to hold it in place, and there are directions on it. So that's our first aid kits. Another things that we see once we go above the cartridge belt is we have what's called a haversack. So this haversack here is to carry stuff. It's really like a backpack. It's a bunch of different straps. It's all strapped on together. You can see we have 3 holding it this way and then this one holding it down. So you'd see stuff in there like personal effects. You can't really fit that much in. You can fit about a blanket. You'd see some people with the shelter half in there or wrapped around the top of the haversack. Just a bunch of different stuff. Really whatever they could fit in there, they would put in there. Right above our haversack we have this little slot right here that we can put a bunch of different things on. We see right now we have a T-handle shovel. You see these earlier in the war. This is also a design that's carried over from World War I. You can also see some people would have an axe with them. And there's also a pickaxe. We don't have one of those with them, but it'd be like a collapsible pickaxe that they can put on the back. Then later on in the war, we see they have a shovel like this. This one's a folding shovel, and it's a design that the U.S. military would use for a lot of years after the World War II. Right to the side of our haversack, we have a bayonet. This is a bayonet for an M1 Garand. This is basically a design that's carried over from World War I. The World War I bayonets would have been a little bit longer. And this just goes on the side, and it's held in right there. Now we go on top of our shovel. We have a meat can pouch. In there we have a mess kit. We can open that up. We can use it as a frying pan. But inside you have utensils. You get about 3 utensils. Hopefully, generally what people would just end up with was a spoon. but also that was issued was a fork and a knife. And a general like little trend that you can see here is that everything's meant to like stack on top of each other. So you can literally just throw this thing on like a backpack and you have everything that you'll need. Our last thing that we're going to be taking a look at is a gas mask bag. Every soldier was issued one of these in the beginning parts of the war, but once it became clear that Hitler wasn't going to use the mustard gases from World War I, a lot of people just threw them away, but they still needed spaces to put like personal effects like that. So a lot of times what you would see is soldiers throwing away the gas mask, keeping the bag, and putting in personal effects. So if you look in here, we got medical books, we got helmet nets, playing cards, stuff like that would be stored in these instead of a gas mask, just to make room for it. And so that about covers everything. This is a pretty broad, generalized kind of setup that we have here. You can see like paratroopers would have different kinds of setups, Marines would have different setups, but this is a pretty basic thing. You'll see these in, like this general setup in a lot of pictures from World War II, and a lot of it is really very similar to what you would see in World War I. So that concludes it for my episode of History with Jimmy. This has been Chandler, and signing off.